verbal in some states, like I'm in Florida, written. Now, in so doing, that would be kind of contradictory to the whole point of duly anonymized CI. So we don't do that. We take contemporaneous notes, physical, on a Remarkable Pro or Pro Plus or whatever it is, and ultimately either type them up or use OCR to get it and send it back to that respondent, usually via WhatsApp or Signal or email or whatever they want, but some non-corporate channel, so they can say, yes, this is correct, redline this, redact this, I shouldn't have said that, and we will go with exactly what you said. We're not going to report something you don't want, and that builds trust and credibility over time, dually. Having those proper kind of feedback loops, as discussed here in the bottom right, is necessary. Now, let's say that there's a really juicy bit that Lacey let us know about BMS and its divestiture of the China joint venture, which happened today, for what it's worth. But she gave it to us about 2 weeks early, and that was something very interesting to our clients because they wanted to understand the private equitization of China in biopharma. But she says, I don't want that out. We would never, under any circumstances, reveal that. That would be effectively virtually burn bagged. Okay? Why? Because we respect our sources and we expect them to respect us. Now, at the same time, let's say that we mischaracterize something in our write-up. We would hope that you would correct it with a red line. It takes a little bit of extra time, but it's saving everyone a lot of unnecessary aggravation in the end. It builds our credibility, it builds your credibility, it builds our trust of each other. And when you come to us and say, hey, where's the next hot thing? You know, BMS is cutting jobs, like left, right, and center, and I need to know where to go next. We tell you, we heard some rumors that, the immunology degrader space is heating up. Maybe you want to go to like Monte Rosa. And that's how it works. It is not quid pro quo, it is not transactional, it's really relational. That's proper intelligence, okay? We're not gonna go to, some hot club in Dubai and hand you a suitcase of $100,000 in hundreds just because you're giving us hot information. It doesn't work like that. It's not romanticized in that regard. Anyone who misinterprets it as such is unfortunately misperceiving reality, okay? Any questions or thoughts?
I guess in that example, are you saying there's like an insights trade?
No, it's not an insights trade. So that's a good question though. So insights trade, or kind of horse trading, as we call it professionally, is not good. In so doing, you're providing probably non-public information in exchange for non-public information. That's quid pro quo, that's illegal. What we're doing is sanitized, non-client confidential insight that we have. So similar to I'm sure you've seen my LinkedIn post, Matt, and I'm putting stuff up there that isn't necessarily super publicly known, but if you're really looking at it and reading the tea leaves, you can put it together. Like that, same idea. It's enough that it requires them to think about it, and especially you're not revealing anything in breach of confidences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's not confidential, but I guess I'm trying to clarify, they're providing information as the source, but then kind of in your example, it was the Monte Rosa job opportunity or a hot company. I guess is that typically the trade-off for a source to participate?
Depends.
I know the liability trust, but I'm just trying to figure out really why they're incentivized. For instance, since Lacey is the example, when she sees this transcript, how come everything's not struck out?
No, that's a good question. So typically people like to talk. Yeah, they like to talk about what they like, what they do. There are myriad kind of personality archetypes of why somebody does or doesn't want to reveal information. There are people who are, candidly very disenfranchised to their organization. Okay? And they talk. I don't trust them that much. Their credibility is limited because when you're disenfranchised, you tend to hyperbolize. Okay? There are people who are what we call Cassandras, which is somebody who really just wants to tell the truth as they see it because they think that it's being hidden in some kind of accusation, not necessarily intentional, but it's not getting out there the way they want it. We trust them a lot. You have people who are whistleblowers in the intelligence community. We don't really deal with that, but people talk because they want it. They have people who are mentor complex. I built the XYZ marketing function for cell and gene therapy and was the first person to do it in the U.S. and therefore treat me with respect and kiss the ring. Okay, we'll kiss the ring. Talk to me. All different reasons. You just have to know, and again, it goes back to your asset recruitment, where you're doing it. You have to know what motivators there are, what drivers, dynamics. Typically, we're not going to cold anyone, so it's based on relationship. I might ask you, Matt, like for somebody who's at your former company, if you're help me just figure out who would be a good person to talk to. You'd help me with that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a verification.
It's much more complicated than simple the way that it looks. And again, a lot of human intelligence vendors don't necessarily take this approach, and that's why I want to have this conversation with you guys to show you what we consider to be best practices. Now, other vendors might be able to get similar, better, worse information than us. I can't tell you, but this is how we've made it work for 13.5 years and been very credible and been able to build a decent business. Any other questions before we move on? You look like you have a question. No? What is your name and where are you from?
I'm Anya Shashova Api.
Okay, cool. Very nice to meet you. Okay, we did a round of everyone, so apologies that I just pulled you out on that one. But
sorry for being late.
No.
It's
not class. Don't worry, we're not docking you or anything. All good. So I want to take roughly 5 minutes and have a scenario here that we're going to work through at our respective tables. Someone here has an unfair advantage. They do something biosimilar, so at least you have 3 people at the table, not 5 and the others. Now, in this scenario, biosimilar launch Intel. Competitor biosimilar in phase 3. Mind you, biosimilars don't do a phase 2, they do phase 1, phase 3, go to market if approved. Design human intelligence, really quick and dirty, to predict the launch strategy and pricing model. Okay? So to the best of your abilities, based on what I've described to you today, the different types of sources you talk to, would you go to a conference, would you do an ad hoc research, just general. We don't need a whole detailed research plan, but you want to know roughly pricing, and with pricing, for antitrust purposes and for the avoidance of doubt, you cannot give direct pricing, meaning $2,700 less 25% gross to net equals this. That is an absolute antitrust. You can be directional. We're lower than HUMIRA by 20% or 30%. That's fair. Okay? So rather than working it out in total, I'm going to call on people randomly or call on tables randomly, or not so randomly, and try to understand what you do. So the first question is, we want to understand this commercial go-to-market intel about a biosimilar competitor. And just to give you a little more texture on it, we're going to use an adalimumab biosimilar, because it's already happened. We're going to use a European company, okay, that has US presence. Not going to be Teva, intentionally for that purpose. We want to understand, how would they do it? So first question is, you're designing a research program, you're the head of CI, or you're the head of CI for this brand. What are you going to try to do? Are you going to do secondary? Are you going to do primary? Are you going to go to conferences? Just to start with those broad buckets. Anyone? Let's say, yeah.
Let's say no need to reinvent the wheel. I would look for comps in the space or companies that have done something similar. I kind of benchmark everything to that. So start with secondary first.
Okay, fair. So look at like retro analogs.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a good start. Now let's take HUMIRA for example, real world, adalimumab. Did HUMIRA, adalimumab biosimilarization, follow the traditional US biosimilar trend? Binary question. Raise the hands, yes. Raise the hands, no. Those of you who said no are correct. So your retro study, completely false. You just wasted 250 hours of your time, whatever resources you needed to do, on something that gave you nothing. Okay? I mean, no disrespect, I'm just telling you, you're new to CI, 5 months. Okay? So, next question. We're not doing a retro. What are we doing? Somebody? Lacey?
Just a future-oriented
Okay.
insights.
Yeah, future-oriented insight. So, what would you suggest to get there? Are we gonna go to a conference? Are we gonna phone a friend? Are we gonna do primary?
Primary.
Or primary? Good idea. Okay. And in this primary, about how many interviews would you want to do to make sure you have something credible?
I would say anywhere between 10 to 15 interviews.
Yep. And would they be necessarily all with biosimilar manufacturer X, or would they also be with other parties?
No.
Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
So, say like 5 with biosimilar manufacturer X and 10 among different parties. What other parties would you look to?
Anybody?
Suppliers.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry, I didn't hear
Oh, I
what.
was just gonna say suppliers.
Yeah, absolutely. Suppliers.
What about payers?
Payers?
Okay. What about other biosimilar players that have been in the space? Okay. What about non-adalimumab biosimilar players that just are watching? And
KOL.
sorry, KOL.
KOL.
Yeah. Sure.
I don't think the KOLs is necessarily known for the commercialization, but what I would say that another thing that I would do is I also want to go to peers to AbbVie. Okay, so look at like Genentech, which have like Avastin, Herceptin, Rituxan biosimilarization, and see what happened there and what they would have done differently. So to your question, or to your point, Eric, about retro, I wouldn't just look at secondary for retro. If I wanted to use retro, I would talk to the horse's mouth who experienced something similar, understood what happened, what they could have done differently, pitfalls, etc., and then model it out based on the other interviews. Now, do we want to look at anything secondary? Okay.
Always.
Yeah, always. Okay, start with secondary, so understand and anchor everything. So you start just randomly talking to people, you're gonna guess stuff. You have no idea if it's right, wrong, or what. So we start with secondary, we anchor it, probably start a couple of those interviews maybe with biosimilar manufacturer X, couple of pairs, couple of peers, get a initial kind of idea, feeling, directionally what we're looking at, connect with a client, maybe say, this is what we're hearing, raw intel, it's what we think it may mean, directional. Client says, I don't believe it, okay? Nonsense. We are going to win in biosimilar adalimumab. They're not gonna be able to make traction for the next 24 months. Completely 180 to everything that has ever happened in a non-innovator space at that time. So we go back to the drawing board. Who do we talk to next? Anyone? Policy? Someone in policy? Someone in guidelines? Humira is approved for what, 19 or 21 indications, I think, and it spans across myriad immunology and also ophthalmology for non-infectious uveitis, if I'm not mistaken. So non-infectious uveitis isn't a big deal, but derm, rheum, gastro, those are pretty big. That's like probably 90% of the business. So I would say at this point, maybe we talk with your KOL, okay? But we're not just talking about any old KOL who speaks on the SAB for AbbVie. We're talking about somebody who's at the American Academy of Dermatology, at ACR, who sits in the guideline committees, who's going to endorse or not endorse the credible evidence, class 1A or not, okay? Get their perspective. I would also want to talk with some other people who are involved in, broad brush kind of dynamics of sequencing in the payer space. So I would talk with like a third party vendor maybe, someone who is like, IQVIA or Syneos or Inizio that has people who are involved in that type of work. And understand this from them. Does it make sense to you? Does it not make sense? Why? Come back to our client and we show them now, there's a possibility that you'll be able to maintain significant volumes and values of adalimumab, Humira, while still enabling cost-effective biosimilars to enter the market, offering more optionality for patients. Now, why did I say it like that? Why didn't I say to defend and blunt or mitigate your share? Anyone? Legal. So all your CI when you're doing human intelligence is going to eventually get bubbled up to a legal compliance person at some point, your business partner. If you state explicitly, doing X will mitigate Y and cause you to retain Z dollars, that is very, very antitrust and problematic. Now, if you do what is the proper lexicon, which is enabling pro-competition, cost-affordable, patient flexibility, whatever, but still maintaining fidelity to the brand, brand maximization, whatever, that's totally kosher. So you also have to be careful with the level of complexity and sophistication of the communication, both that you're doing when communicating these results, as well as what you're inbound receiving from your vendors. So it's important during your scoping calls and kickoffs to make sure, or your evals of vendors, that they actually have the appropriate language, because everything's super competitive. Everything's getting scrutinized with the microscope now. You see the Trump 2.0 administration, and I'm not being political here, just factual, is causing for microscopes on direct-to-consumer advertising on TV, fair balance claims, everything. Everything is going to be scrutinized at the rate it's going, including CI, secondary, primary, implications, strategy work, everything. So maybe it's not the first thing to go, but you have to assume that at some point it's going to be Exhibit A in some deposition or something. Because when you're dealing with competition for multi-hundred million, multi-billion dollar products, people get nasty. Okay? Any questions or thoughts? I mean, do you agree with me on that? Do you disagree based on your experience? Love to hear your perspectives on that. Anyone? Got some like water or coffee or something. Come on, juice, sugar. We're gonna start calling people. Giovanni, what do you? You're newer to CI.
I do get nervous when I see that all the CI stuff we do, or the compliance and the legal chief officers are copied on it. For sure, it makes me double think about everything that we write.
And honestly, you should. I mean, every word has indelible and irreversible consequence. Why do I say that? It's a digital record. You cannot purge it permanently. It is somewhere on a server somewhere. So, whatever you are communicating, when it goes out of your OneDrive and into digital ether on the company server, be very aware of what the weight, magnitude, and direction